demo. Today we're going to be talking about taking our wanted poster picture, which we just edited in Photoshop, and we'll bring it into Illustrator to live trace it. So I'm going to go open in just like the main menu here. I'll click on my PSD file and then I'll hit open. By opening it into an Illustrator file, it'll just generate a new file at the same size as the photo, and so you can hit OK. The other ways that you can actually go about this as well is you can just create a new file and then go up to File and Place right here, Shift, probably Control P on a Windows computer, and then you can search for this image or this PSD, and then you can place it there. You can see as well this image has the background removed, so when I place it onto this white background, it kind of looks like it just disappears, or the white background becomes part of it. If I drag it off the artboard, you can see there's nothing really behind there. So, Control-0. I want to live trace this image off of the artboard just so you can actually see what's going on, and what, as far as like what is the actual image and what is actually being modified when we do this live trace function. So I'm going to click on the image. You know, when the image is selected, if I go into outlines, you can see there's nothing there. It's just a simple rectangle. If I go back from outlines, you can now see the actual image. But when you select the image with your selection tool, you'll see some options change at the top of the window. And the one that we're going to be using right here is called Image Trace. And so if you click on Tracing Presets, you can see one that says 3, 6, and 16 colors. And so we're actually interested in getting some color in this image. So I'm going to go ahead and select 6 colors. And then if it looks weird, we'll kind of modify it from there. So first we'll go to 6 colors. Tracing may proceed slowly. I'll hit OK. And then the computer starts doing its work. Basically what happens here is Illustrator analyzes the photo. It looks for common colors and shapes, and then it assigns vectors for those shapes. The reason why we modified this image in Photoshop was so that it perhaps would make those shapes a little bit more recognizable for Illustrator to draw. All right, you can notice here, even though I removed the background, that it's filled the background in with white. So I'm going to click on this image tracing panel because I don't really like how this image looks yet. So I'll click here. And then when this image shows up, you can also see there's this advanced panel. And if you click that arrow, you're going to see a lot more options start to drop down. Probably one of the first things I'll end up doing is increasing the number of colors. And so maximum colors for using can go all the way up to 30. And right now we're at 6. So I'm just going to push it up. Let's see like what 16 looks like. You'll see it then goes back into retracing. Give the computer some time to work on that. You can see the image is looking a little bit better. We have a little bit more description that's going on there. Something that can be helpful too is just, you know, looking at the image up close and then kind of seeing the tracing results that come out of it. So I'm now bumping it up to 19. You can see there's a little bit more detail there. Depending on what you want to do, you can continue bumping up the number of colors until it actually looks a bit more like you, or it creates an image that you're actually a bit more satisfied with. And then we can move forward with then tracing the image. So I think this is looking pretty good. Maybe let's see what happens if I do 25. While this is loading, I want you to pay attention as well to like how all the shapes are being described within the file. Again, this is an interpretation of a photograph now put into vectors. This is looking pretty good. You can mess with the paths, the corners, and the noise. So basically, if you bring your noise down, you'll see with each one of these settings, it'll actually either add to the reality of the photo or it'll modify it to look a little bit more lumpy or smooth. Notice that if you hover your mouse over the description, so more corner emphasis, in this case, higher value means more corners. Here, reduces noise by ignoring areas of specified pixel size. Higher value means less noise. So let's see what happens if we just go all the way to 100. Sometimes this can be a great way to just see what the tool does. If you max it out and it produces a result that you like, then great. And if it gets a little bit too exciting, then you can always back off of it. So again, you can see less noise there, kind of smooths some of the image out. If I increase my corners, I'll get more corners. If I drop this down, perhaps some of these shapes will get a little bit more smooth. Let's see what happens. Didn't really notice too much happening there. And then for our paths, higher value means tighter fit. So if I want it to represent my image a bit more, I can bring that up just to see what it looks like. So with the end, I can't really even see too much of a difference there. But once you figure out your image and you pick all of the different settings within the image trace menu, you could then end up hitting expand at the top of the window. And expand basically says like, okay, this is what I want. Let's go ahead and turn it into vector. So I can go ahead and hit expand right here. And you can notice right away when expand happens, you can now see all of those vector lines are described. Here you can see them illuminated. If I go Command Y, you can also see all of those pathways are now drawn in place. If you zoomed in as well, you can see how many different anchor points there are. Typically, if I was to actually like draw this by hand, I would not use as many anchor points. So like between these areas, I might, even put like 2 or 3 anchor points, not 23. And one of the things that we'll end up doing as we finish this, as we start to finish and modify this drawing, is we'll actually go into some parts of these anchor points and maybe clean them up to make them look a little bit cleaner and smoother. So the last thing I want to do is for this image, I'm not really interested in this white background. But you can notice that when I get rid of this white shape in the background, it's actually going to cut a little bit into the shoulders on either side. So something I'll have to end up doing is filling that back in with the right color. So the last thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And just to make this look a bit better, I'm going to take my pen tool. I'll start to draw a pathway here. I'm going to then draw roughly below this shoulder line here. And then I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Shift Control left bracket. And by doing left bracket, it takes that piece of white that I just had and it will just move it to the back or behind the image there. And so it fills in that little white space there. Last thing I'll do is fill in this spot on the right side as well. Again, just take my pen tool, just freehand in some of these shapes pretty quickly. As you look closer at the drawing, you can kind of see this rough and bumpy kind of texture to it. So if I changed one of those settings within the dialog box for live trace, I could have made these paths a bit more smooth. So if I was to trace it again, I might actually consider that by zooming in and seeing what the image looks like. So Shift, Control, left bracket, again sends that white piece to the background. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. I want to select the whole image, and then I will go Control G. And so when I go Control G, this groups the whole image together. So if I click on one part and move it again, all the pieces are all part of the same family, and so they'll move together. Just to demonstrate, the color is transparent. This negative space is transparent behind there. Now if I draw a square, let's do some bluish color, and I'll hit OK. When I drag my image in front of this, Shift, Control, right bracket to bring it in front, you can now see there's a transparent background and this picture of me vectorized sitting in front of that transparent background. Once we get to this stage, what I'm going to do is encourage you to actually get into your photo and start to look at those like little nitty-gritty spots and see if you can clean them up. And that will be involved with taking out your direct selection tool, maybe actually getting into specific anchor points, and then taking your pen tool and deciding what anchor points will stay and which ones will disappear. So we'll be getting into some demos just to describe how to actually remove anchor points and modify your drawing to make it look the best that it can. All right, thanks for listening.